Likkutei Torah Devarim, page Aleph, like 10 lines, 12 lines at the end of Vay's base. Okay, Al Rebbe was explaining this whole concept of Meidem Anachnu Loch, that what's the disagreement that we're admitting to is, from Hashem's perspective, we don't exist. From our perspective, we do exist. So Meidem Anachnu Loch, that we come to the realization, we agree with you, we don't exist. So he started to explain how does it come about through the level of Yohavta doing mitzvahs, and he explains the whole thing about the Bria Yesh Miyayin and all the various different levels. Even Gan Eden is limited, but when you do a mitzvah, that level of a mitzvah connects Asher Nechi, Mitzavcha, Hayim, through the level of a Nechi, he connects to a Nechi, Ata, talking straight to the person. You have connected straight with Hashem. You create the level of Mitzavcha because we're bound to Hashem, therefore Hayim, therefore it's above time and place. So that's the way to do it. Okay, so now he says, about 12 lines in the end of A's base. Therefore, the mitzvahs are called the 248 limbs of Hashem. What does it mean, 248 limbs of Hashem? Ramach Hamshachas, 248 different Hamshach of a Chayis Me'eratz and Elyon, from the will of Hashem. We learned many times, the question is like, the unasked question, why did Hashem give us 248 mitzvahs? Why not 245, 230, 220? I mean, what's the chesh with 248? And why are they called Devarim the Malchus? So Rabbi is explaining here that why are they called Devarim? Because what's the purpose of a limb? The purpose of a limb is to bring down the chayis of the neshama for that particular limb. And because, in fact, it works like this. Why down here does a man have 248 limbs? Because Lamaila, there's 248 different Amshachas. In other words, every limb of the person brings down a different level of the Neshama's power that no other limb brings down. Every limb is unique. Even the right hand and the left hand, but the right hand is one Hamshacha Chesed and the left hand is good. I mean, whatever. So therefore, why they call it? So therefore, because there's 248 different levels of Elokus that need to be revealed in the world, because there's 248 different Amshach that Hashem wants to have in the world, so therefore you need 248 mitzvahs, because each mitzvah brings down a revelation that no other mitzvah brings down. Just like each limb brings down a part of the neshama that no other limb brings down. Like every limb has a vein from the brain that has in it the will to turn it kfi shereitza. In other words, the person wants to move his hand, so instantaneously it moves. Right? It doesn't take any time. And therefore it says v'yahavta. In other words, it says like this: v'yahavta says Hashem Elokecha. Simply means love God, your God. Yeah, but Lepel, it's difficult to understand. Why does it say Hashem Elokecha? V'yahavta says Hashem. So here the Alter Rebbe is saying like this, because this is what the pasuk says v'yahavta, because by loving Hashem, then you can come to Havaya being Elokecha. Through Ava means connecting. Love is echad, right? Love brings one person closer to Hashem. Gili Elokus, he calls the revelation of Elokus. B'shnei chalali libcha, in the two ventricles of the heart. Chol asmali meridus, chol asmali, which is the level of where the nefesh habamis is gvura. That's meridus, bitterness, al shemashuk, b'nyani elam haza. That he's engulfed, is absorbed in Eilam Haza things. And he's very far from Hashem. And the right side, the right ventricle, the Simcha Shal Mitzvah, Yismach Yisrael Be'esav. So therefore you have the two parts of the heart, B'chol Avavcha, meaning with the right side and the left side. As Alter Rebbe says in the first parak of Tanya, the Nefesh Habamis is on the left side of the heart. The Nefesh Sholakis is on the right side of the heart. So B'chol Levavcha means with the Nefesh Sholakis, the Nefesh Habamis, with Ya'ava and Yir and so on, Shenislavish Ba'asiyah. And look in Tanya Perik Lamedalid, V'chol Shetei Meridus Yosef. May I had that, and the more the bitterness is, not depression, the more the bitterness is that I'm far from Hashem, the more simcha you'll have when you do a mitzvah. Because now you realize you have an essential bond with Hashem by doing the mitzvah. He says, so he says like this, bottom line, how do you do this? So he explains the pasuk. At the beginning of the Maimed, the Alter Rebbe asked, how can mitzvahs be hayim if it's 3,000 years old? So he's explaining the bottom line is a person through mitzvahs connects themselves with the level of anechi, which is above time and place. So therefore, if you're above time and place, there's no difference between yesterday, a million years ago, 10 million years ago, 3,000 years ago. You're all connected. And he says, Av Shein Giliyato, even though l'chera, the Gilu is not now, this Gilu of Mitzav Chayim, but nevertheless, La'asid Yah Gilu, it's La'asid. And that's what the pasuk says, Zereya Tzedakis. When you plant Tzedakis, then Matzmiach Yeshuas, what grows? Yeshua's salvation. Or like it says, Vayisha Hashem, which is Shin Ayin Hey Naheren. The 375 Giluyim from above, similar to, today we would call it a trust fund. But in those days there was a box, Malaya Avonim Tevis Margolius. A guy has a box full of diamonds and gold and silver. He's very happy knowing that it's there. Even though he doesn't see them, because they're locked up somewhere. A king can have a treasure room, yeah? It's locked up, he doesn't see it. Nevertheless, the fact that he knows he has it, that itself causes simcha. It's brought down that they say about Rabbi Tam and about other great people, so Machzedek also had it. When they learned, they would have a sack of money on the table. Because you see money, you feel good. So it opened up the mind to be able to learn better. Okay, Gimel. So the Alter Rebbe is explaining what is supposed to be. What's supposed to be, a Jew is supposed to be after b'chol levavcho b'chol nafshecho. In other words, you're supposed to be so connected to Hashem through meditation. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The concept made them anachnu loch that Hashem is right, and there's Einod Milvade, and therefore we're bringing down this level of Vi'ato into b'chol levavcho. But the Alter Rebbe said that's the way it's supposed to be. But it's not. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it is by tzaddikim, by the way. It came, but when it's not like that, and what's his bitterness? Not from a lack of kedusha, from a lack of money, from lack of gashmias, from elam hazeh. By a lack of children, and parnasa, whatever it may be. And what is the simcha? Reality is mishlemusi b'hem. When he has the completeness of parnas, is everything good. So he says, that's not the way it's supposed to be. So where is that coming from? If it's supposed to be the simcha only asher nechim etzav chayim, so how in the world does it come the opposite, that we're sameach from worldly pleasures and we're depressed from lack of worldly pleasures? So he says that's the goal of Sanitza Tzaluki. That's because in God Nefesh, the godly spark, is in the goal of Pesach Nefesh Abamas. Karachal v'nei Geizel like Rachel, the sheep before the shearing. Balzek, even that's what the pasuk says. Siyam b'mishpati pada. The Maimer began. The pasuk of the Maimer is Siyam b'mishpati pada. That Siyam will be deemed with mishpat, which is Torah. The Shavan to return is with tzedakah. Yeah. So he says, that's what it says, Tziyin b'mishpati pada. Tziyin, what does Tziyin mean? Tziyin actually refers to Yerushalayim, but the word Tziyin means a mark. Is simana, like he says, no simana, like Rabbi said, I'm only a siman of Hashem. In fact, the Rebbe uses to call the Friedrich Rebbe's the oil Tziyin, Asker ala Tziyin. right? Or the Rebbe says, I'm going to the Tzion. Simply it means, a Tzion is, it's a mark where the grave is, it's marked. So it's a sign that this is a grave and who the grave belongs to. But here in a deeper sense, the Alter Rebbe says, what is the Tzion? B'chinas Pnimis Halev. It's interesting, there's a Maimon of the Mittel Rebbe that speaks about when you visit grave of tzaddikim, and he says there's 5 levels of visiting grave of tzaddikim, and the highest level of visiting a grave of a tzaddik is dapkes rucha berucha, clinging of the living tzaddik to the passing away tzaddik, and he writes it's greater than Gilui Eliyahu. It's a greater level than Gilui Eliyahu. But what people say, tzaddikim had Gilui Eliyahu, Eliyahu never appeared to them. When a Rebbe goes to Tzion, it's a higher level than Stam Gilui Eliyahu.
Who said that?
The Mittel Rebbe has a Maimon. It's called Maimon Shtadchas. It's printed. Yeah, right. But there's a Vaida. When a Rebbe goes to the hill, it's not Stam, you go to the Hayim here, it's a Vaida. In fact, the Rebbe used to come back very late from the oil. Way after Shki to daven mincha. So one of the elder Chassidim asked the Rebbe, Shmuel Levit, and asked the Rebbe, why don't you daven mincha before you go to the oil? The Rebbe used to leave like 2-3 o'clock to the oil and come back who knows what time. So yes, and why don't you daven mincha before you go to the oil? Then you don't have that issue, And the Rebbe told the Aved of the oil is before mincha. It's not so simple.
You were nervous asking about that question?
No, he was a Rav in Beis Harav. He was one of the Alter Chassidim. He was a Rav in the Friedrich Rebbe's house, and by the Rebbe he was a Rav as long as he was alive. Anyway, so that's Yitzi and Askar. The interesting, my uncle told me once, the Rebbe answered somebody wrote into the Rebbe thing, and the Rebbe answered Askar Latzian. I mentioned it the oil, yeah? And then the person wrote it a second time, and the Rebbe answered Askar Eidapam Latzian. I'll mention it again at the oil. The Rebbe didn't go to the oil in between those two things. He didn't go to the oil. Yet he said, I'll mention it again at the oil, but he wasn't even there yet. I mean, it was like... Anyway, this is not for us.
So Rabbi, all of us can get this Gilui Eliyahu, we just don't feel it?
Don't hold your hopes too high. No, a Rebbe can get it. We go in, Begapa Yovid, Begapa Yetze. We go in like a behemoth, we go like a behemoth. No, we can't reach that level.
It's like Shabbos Chazan, we get it, but we just don't feel it.
No. We don't get that level, trust me. In Yiddish, there's an expression, literally means don't convince yourself of birds in your bosom. In other words, it's an expression, don't convince yourself that it's something that's going to happen. It's not going to happen. Okay, Tzion is Simon Abama, which means, what is Tzion referred to? By the way, it's brought down that Tzion is the same numerical value as Yosef. The Pnim is Halev, Va'ava Tivis, the natural love, Va'ava Pnimis, and the internal love, Hamasuteres Belev Ish Yisrael, which is concealed within every single Jew. So he says like this, Tzion b'mishpat tipada. What does Tzion b'mishpat tipada mean? Tzion needs to be redeemed. Tzion b'mishpat tipada. Tzion is redeemed through mishpat, which is, as Targum says, kilchasa, meaning Torah. That means the level of Tzion, which refers to the neshama, the pneumius of the neshama, the essence of the neshama, is in Golos and it needs to be redeemed. So the Rebbe is explaining, why don't we feel the way it's supposed to be, this love of only Hashem, Mitzavcha Hayom, and this whole thing? So he said, because the neshama is in Golos. Tzion b'mishpat tipada. Tzion has to be redeemed. V'gami b'Golos, and it's also it's concealed and in Golos. V'tipada b'mishpat, and it's going to be redeemed by the level of mishpat. What is mishpat? Hainu halachas. Kataguma, like the pasuk says, kamish b'tarishin. Over there in Chumash and Vayeshev, when Yosef interpreted the baker's dream, and he said, you're going to go back, hamishpat orishin, like it used to be, you're going to become the baker again. So Uncle says, kamishpat kilchas ekadmaisa, like the first halacha. So you see, mishpat, it represents halacha, meaning Torah. V'ayna kamesha merazali chazal say, ein hagolius miskanshis. Goliath will end and be gathered elabis chusa mishnayis. Only in this chusa mishnayis shenemar gam ki yitnu bagoyim ki Torah od. Okay, so because the real level of learning Torah, the highest level of learning Torah, when it has to come down into halacha, because then you have to really go into the proper depth of it to understand what the halacha is. Like this, you can learn Torah, it could be theoretical or hypothetical, but it's not real. When you have to, therefore in Torah you have Elo v'Elo Divrei Elokim Chaim. From Elokim, this opinion could be right, this opinion could be right, that opinion could be right. But Havaya Imei, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, about David Malach, the pasuk of Havaya Imei, Halacha Kameisi B'chol Mokim. David HaMelech's greatness was the halacha was like him, because he had the level of Yud Kevavka. Havaya Imei, that's a deeper level than Elokim. So the Rebbe is saying that's an emerita Mishnayis, which is basically halacha. So Tziyah in B'mishpat Tipada means the Nefesh Halakis is in Golos. Okay, because by us world is what matters. And therefore, that's Torah Od. The Shavel, in its returnees, what does that mean? It's plural. Shavel, its returnees, plural. That's Beis Chalali Alev. Shem Shvu Yemamish, the two parts of the heart that he said before, should be really into Kedusha. And now in Golos by the Nefesh Shabamis, why is it in Golos? Because the bitterness, the miridus of the Nefesh, which should have been, what's the bitter about that is distant from Hashem, what is it now bitter about? Doesn't have food, it doesn't have this. The same thing, simcha. The two things, like you said before, what are the two parts of the heart? Miridus and simcha. So instead of having miridus of being far from Hashem and simcha of mitzvah, so what are we having? Miridus and bitterness of not having what I want in the world, and the simcha of worldly things. So the mamish and bitterness. So this pasuk that the Rebbe is explaining is referring to the galus that the nefesh shalikis is by the nefesh shabamas, and that seeing that neshama, the pnimis of the neshama, that level needs to be redeemed. What? Yeah. Well, same thing. What do judges do? What judges tell you what the halach is in the court case. No, that's what a judge is.
Different from thinking, having kavanah to bring that back to halacha.
No. The kavanah over there is to bring back the judges of the Sanhedrin. Right. And he says like this, in the level of tziyin, which represents the essence of the neshama, there's no bechina zu below mezeh. In evil, there's no such level. In other words, in the level of yechida, there's no opposite of yechida. There's no yechida by in the nefesh habamis. There is whatever. Bottom line, the Gemara says that the nefesh shaba elokis in the yechida of the nefesh, there is no zelu mazeh. Because zelu mazeh, like the Rebbe explains in Tanya, in the rotzein, in the seichel, in the midas, right? There's will of kedusha, will of evil. In the essence of the neshama, there's no. So therefore, tziyin is not actually. He says, they're not in captivity. It needs to be redeemed, but it's shavel means it's captivity. Captivity is a much greater level than Golus. Golus is you're not controlling yourself, but you're not in captivity, like V'shavel is. Therefore, it doesn't say V'shavel. Ve'em ha'yivtu b'tzedakah. And how do you redeem this level of the neshama through tzedakah, which is rachmanis ala ani? Is it by having rachmanis on a poor person, mida connected mida, racham aleinu v'seim b'libeinu bino bino liba. So therefore, what is the opposite of shaveha, being in captivity, by the nefesh habamis? So by us giving tzedakah, meaning we're having pity on the poor person, then we have a right to daven to Hashem, avinu, avarachman, racham, racham na'aleinu. V'seim b'libeinu, bino lohavin. In other words, we're in Golus, our heart is totally into worldly things. So now we're saying, v'seim b'libeinu, bino lohavin alahaska. So that's why, in fact, that's why the halacha is what the Gemara says in Rabbi Basra. Rabbi Lazi Yar Pirta Lani Vadamatch. The first he used to give tzedakah and then he davened. And he quoted pasuk and he betzedek echs panecha. I betzedek will see your face. But what's the whole vart? When we have Rachman and an ani, what are we davening? We're davening that Hashem should give us what we need. What He knows we need, not what we think we need. What He knows we need. Yeah? So what are we asking? Have Rachmanis on us. So when we give tzedakah before davening, we have Rachmanis on a poor person, so then Hashem has Rachmanis on us. And that's the way Shavel, it becomes redeemed with tzedakah. By the way, now that the